Wait, whoops. That's the wrong output stream. There we go. Yep, we're back. Is there anything? Oh yeah, here. So. Is there something to talk about that I can think of? Admittedly, most of the turns are going to look like this. Commanding workers to do something interesting. Tails, tails, tails. Occasionally I just am around the build queue of a city. And or building a new one. Eh, something for you to do. You know what, just head straight for the spot. Hmm. This isn't easy, but I think I'll go for this spot. Seems like a good compromise on a lot of options. Boxing kangaroo. Quartz mine. Missing a couple naps. Tavern, Hippodrome, Sail Weaver, Grove G Shop, Diamond Mine, Chanteller, Pier. You know what? Upgrade. Probably should do that. Makes it even... It helps deal with the rising difficulty of barbarians that I have to contend with. Also makes it even less likely for the hunter units to take damage. Now, of course, there is a final hunter unit, and after that gets built, well, or perhaps even obsoleted, it's not possible to build anymore, but... Let's see here. Yeah, the big game hunter. There's also Tsavo hunters, which are the specific unit for Kenyans. I get 5 extra strength. Okay. Settler unit. Head to here. Please don't get attacked by wild animals. That would be mildly embarrassing. And, you know, bad. Perhaps I should talk about the concept of the Dark Ages. Yeah, that could be fun. Finds more production, and I can find ways to lower maintenance. Or offset the costs. These two almost completely offset it with just another +1 somewhere. The grocery could offset it completely, but... I mean, this city has crime problems, so I can't exactly build much that increases crime. It's just not a good idea. Oh hey, a castle. You know what? Yeah, that helps with the crime problems. So let's put that at the end. So yeah, the Dark Ages. The fact that this has become a source of, you know, an element of common parlance, or well, okay, everyone knows what the Dark Ages are. Which is probably not a good thing, because it was more or less Age of Enlightenment propaganda. I mean, yeah, I like the Age of Enlightenment. But I'm not going to go around spouting inaccuracies. I have qualms with a lot of things, but I want to make sure that at least my qualms are based on accurate information. Which is why I very much dislike misinformation, disinformation, etc. Those things are bad and should feel bad. But yeah, the Dark Ages tactically did not exist. There's a period of time you could call the Dark Ages, but, well, a lot of the ideas that you have when you hear the term Dark Ages, inaccurate, to say the least. Great, now I'm uncertain what happened to that boat. Head back. Perhaps the exploration boat that I have dealt with it. I won't be able to know for sure. Oh, falconry school. Oh yeah, those are a thing now. Yeah, the Dark Ages. As I said, those technically do not exist. First off, inaccuracies aside, the very concept is based around the idea that the fall of Rome has led to an age of ignorance. First off, even if this were the case, this would only apply to Europe. So for obvious reasons, limitation. Oh, lumber mill there. There was no Dark Ages in Asia, insofar as the dynastic cycle existed, so within China it was business as usual. Japan, I'm not sure how things were going there. I think it was during... Yeah, I think it was around the peak of the shogunate. Or one of the peaks of the shogunate. My Japanese history is not amazing, so... Definitely take everything I say on that with a grain of salt. Or 3. Where does that term even come from? Anyway, there's ceremony, shirt town well, trans hut, candy shop, gem cutter, fruit maker, dance hall, Kiva. There. Oh! I definitely should build that covered bridge. Bridges are nice. I also don't know what Korea was doing around that time. Africa is difficult to talk about because we don't have many records, so from there, so we really don't know much about what was going on there. I'm during the Middle Ages. Beyond, you know, Mali. And the Middle East was actually starting its golden age. Specifically, Arabia was. Heck, even the term Middle Ages is a bit of a misnomer. Sure, it is about the middle of recorded human history, if you try to look at it a certain perspective, but that's tough to say because recorded human history is like 12,000 years old-ish, and 6,000 years ago was pyramids time. Although, admittedly, once you go further back than that, there really isn't that much that we actually know. So, I know, yield. Eventually, we run out of things that we can say for certain. You know, the thing I always like to fall back on, eventually. Because it is very much true. Oh yeah, I need the high walls in order to build the castle. Oh, town patrol, that way I can build the river authority. And the bazaar. For cash money. Guess insurance office. Auction house. Officium. There. Wow, my income's over 400 per turn. That's good. Honestly, pretty much everything I talk about is historical. You should be backed with the disclaimer. I am no way an expert in any of this. Listen to my words at your, well, maybe not listen, but internalize my words to your own responsibility. Well, it still doesn't feel right. Oh, something's over here. Okay. A lot of the stuff I talk about, I didn't actually research beforehand. Oh no, this people is why under normal circumstances you should, you know, escort the settler. Of course, escorts are annoying. Hang on, I think I'll have a. Where's a horseman? Something cheap. Not an elephant rider. Those are mounted infantry. Yeah. Have that be the escort unit. And then send them back. Yeah. That way I can send the archer to the safe location early. Just assumed. Yeah, okay. If you want an actual correct account,
People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public.
that everything I should say is possibly half remembered from stuff that I read, and is heavily tinged with my own opinion of things, such as authoritarianism bad, and so is inequality of any kind. Well, most kinds. I don't want to deal with those right-wing. Gotcha. Oh, if they have slightly different skill levels, then obviously they're unequal. So inequality is impossible. So therefore, we should worship the rich. That sort of thing. And there we go. I probably just insulted a lot of people. Did I do all the civic changes I wanted to do? I need to double check. Because pretty much every single one of these is an improvement, or at least enough of an improvement for me to want it. Yeah, guilds is just obviously better than trade. Apprenticeship is preferable as to martial, especially since I don't need military stuff anymore. So +3 free specialists in every city. Amazing. Sure, I get slightly less science, but I get more education per turn. So that affects all cities. And agricultural guilds are obviously better than smallholding. Now I just needed to deal with this for 20 turns. My city's being useless for 20 turns. Hooray! But yeah. Stuff I say may be inaccurate, or more likely, outdated. But continuing on, the Middle Ages are a bit of a misnomer, to some degree. Well, the Dark Ages, definitely. Middle Ages, questionable, depends on what you call it. Although if you consider it by Falls of Rome, then yes, it's definitely the Middle Ages. After all, it was between when Rome fell in sometime in the 500s? I don't know when the first Rome fell. And when the second Rome fell in 1453, probably. And then finally there's when Third Rome fell in the 1800s. And I'm sure this has annoyed a lot of people just by saying this. I mean, I'm personally not super enthused about the concept of legitimacy of states anyway. So I can say stuff like that without batting an eye. But yeah, the Dark Ages were definitely a bit of a misnomer. As I was first playing Civ, I was thinking that, you know, the Middle Ages would be much more accurate if it totaled your science production or something, but that's because I, you know, thought about it in such a manner. Ooh. Hmm. Fine. The production's more valuable. But now that well, am definitely years wiser, probably smarter, I guess, and definitely read more a lot. I am definitely more knowledgeable than I was in the past. That I can guarantee, at least. I can say this. Dark Ages are definitely a misnomer. There was a lot of scientific advancement, it's just that, in Europe anyway, there wasn't one big empire to unify them all, like Rome was. And that's okay. You don't need a centralized state, a massive centralized state that rules everything in order for advancement of society. In fact, in some cases, it slows it down. In fact, many cases it slows it down. At least, maybe. It depends on how you interpret what advancement means. Nothing for you to do. Start getting sophistication and upgrade. Yeah, there was plenty of scientific advancement. One of the best examples of this is the buildup of siege engines. Sure, I get that it's annoying to try to measure technological development by how much better they make their weapons. Because, you know, history is not just warfare. It's so much more than just warfare. But I believe the siege engine is an excellent way of describing it in this case. Because a lot of people know of siege engines. The siege engine of the classical period was in large part the ballista, the gigantic crossbow. Gigantic not city-sized, oversized crossbow that fired a bolt about as big around as, you know, the average person's head. I can take the 5 on happiness. Easily. However, and to a lesser extent, there was also the catapult, which was more difficult to handle, but lobbed a very large rock on a ballistic trajectory. These did end up getting used quite a bit in the Middle Ages. But as castle design improved and went from wood to stone, which, by the way, most walls in the classical period were also made of wood, stone was not very common for that sort of thing. But as defenses improved to the point of using stone, the obvious end result, especially, was the creation of new siege engines that could handle it. Enter the superior siege engine, the trebuchet, which dominated siege warfare, at least in Europe, up until gunpowder spread, and people started using cannons for that sort of a thing. To great effect, I must add. There's a reason why it took so long for Constantinople to fall to invasion. Stone walls, especially thick ones, are incredibly strong. But cannons are easily stronger, especially against flat walls. The Theodosian walls were a wonder. At least at the time they were built. Such impressively thick stone walls could only have been possible at that time through a massive empire to exploit. Oh, there's a... Okay, so I guess that's turning into a gold mine then. Hooray! Swapping out commerce for production. Especially now that towns are unlocked. Maybe? Remember the guild stuck doing that, but I think I already have towns. Don't I? Village. Oh. Okay. Village to town. I mean, there isn't that much of a difference, right? Between the two in real life? Honestly, I kind of use those interchangeably, so... It's probably extremely inaccurate. And perhaps I should think about it. But yes, there was definitely technological advancement during the Dark Ages. Heck, alchemy is another good one. It was the first real move into a natural philosophy, which was what science was called before it got its modern name. Heck, depending on the language, it's still called natural philosophy. Today. And that's what it is. That's what science is. The study of the real world. Through logical means. The scientific method, which is developed eventually, is one of the pinnacles of doing this. Of course, it took until the 20th century for it to appear in its modern form, and even then it's, well, not 100%. Because, you know, the only way to ensure it all is continuous development and continuous improvement. That is the very point of science. You cannot have things perfect on the first try. You shouldn't even bother trying to get to that point. Instead, continuously improve. Check to see where you went wrong. Do better. See if you could see if by seeing if a change can get things a little more right than they were beforehand. That is the essence of science. And alchemy was one of the first exercises into this. There were earlier ones, but most of them, practically all of them, were much more closely related with mathematics, like geometry, or, you know, the rest of math. And sometimes it gets questionable over whether or not it really is a natural philosophy if you're just studying math, which is an abstract concept. But alchemy, the predecessor to chemistry, definitely fits the list of, well, pre-modern science, and deserves the position of one of the first. I mean, as I said before, if you try to use alchemy in the modern day, you're wrong, completely wrong. But back then, it was what they had, and the methodology, if not the initial hypotheses, were very much the right way to go about things. Okay, now that everything's back in order, I'm gonna start having to do city stuff again. Maybe. It depends on when the cities are completed. Well, not completed. Done with their queue, so they can work on the next project. Okay, I don't need to build a road on the exact tile that the settler will go, because cities automatically have the highest unlocked tier of road. Which is extremely practical for multiple reasons. Oh, nice. Captured a barb. Because I can use you to speed up the paved roads. There were also other advances that were made. So at the very, not necessarily scientific, but cultural, philosophical, and I guess religious. I'm not very much a fan of religion specifically, so yeah. I'm just not going to talk much about it. But the whole Dark Ages thing was very much an attempt by the Enlightenment folk to, you know, as much as I like the Enlightenment, gotta be accurate. And it was very much an attempt by the Enlightenment folk to paint the past that they came from as barbarous. To a degree that it does not deserve. It really doesn't. Were the times bad? Yes. Or, well, at least compared to what we have now, absolutely. Were they as bad as they make it sound? Not really. Oh yeah, the Apprentice Workshop is amazing, and I should build that. Even if it reduces the gold percentage, it still provides more gold. I shouldn't do more than that, because, yeah, the various smiths. You know what, I can do the donkey. So. But, admittedly, a lot of the philosophical advancements did have to do with theology. But yeah, like I said, the concept of the Dark Ages was very much propaganda by the Enlightenment folk that wanted to paint themselves as much, much better than the past. It's a sort of bringing back the old glories. Kind of like how the Renaissance was a big rediscovery of classical culture within the confines of, oh my, that guild hall. That guild hall. And also I get the tree nursery, which is nice. To be honest, describing an entire period as a Renaissance era is... An entire period of history, global history as Renaissance is also really bad, but I think I'll get into that one later. I could probably save that for when we're actually in the Renaissance period. Although, considering how things are going, this might take another 10 hours. I hope it doesn't, but I would not be surprised about it. Okay then. What does it take to the guild hall? Forge or foundry or metals megaplex. Well, it's the same benefit in production as the forge. Okay, fine. I have to build the clay pit first. I guess I can do. Yeah, okay. I can use the extra production first. It's a +3. This, this, this. This. Okay. I'm gonna back off for the moment. But yes, it was very much an attempt to depict the more recent past as barbarous. to some degree it was, to some degree it wasn't. That is true of every period in history. There are upsides and downsides. Sure, the classical period had a lot of art, architecture, so many new innovations in the way people organized, traveled, etc. Innovations that definitely, in some ways, slowed down the Middle Ages. Of course, it was also the period of time where slavery, you know, that was the most globally accepted phenomenon it ever was. That was probably the period of time where slavery was just the most common thing. And it's utterly atrocious, is what it is. Okay, wait, no. Still there. That's a better organizational setup. Okay, this, 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 and then this. There. Can't believe Winnow hasn't done the engineering school yet. It's been a while. Oh, no. So many copies. Nothing is truly black and white. Some things are worse, yes. Like I can say this, slavery is a negative for most people. The very few people that don't have slavery as a negative are almost always the people owning slaves. And even then, I can point to some negatives on people's psyche for that being the case. But I don't want to do that now. I would be going on even longer, perhaps. Although, admittedly, length is kind of a problem, because finding a topic that I can talk about for an hour is not exactly easy. At all. So, there are very real limits to what I can say. Especially when I run the risk of retreading ground again and again, because I don't remember things. But yes, a lot of the propaganda of the Dark Ages was partially from people who were secularists. I mean, don't get me wrong. Secularism is the greatest thing and should be continued. But I have also been reading Rudolf Rocker's Nationalism and Culture recently, so I can also say that it is extremely difficult for a state to exist without some sort of binding thread keeping everything together. And religion is really, really good at doing that. Like, impressively good. Which is why...
Two cities have been formed by two loves, the earthly by the love of self, the heavenly by the love of God.
No, thank you. Yeah. As a result, you have all this national mythos stuff that likes to appear often within nationalism. I can take the 8 on happiness. I don't need to check birds. I really don't need to check on birds. I can guarantee for a fact that every city that needs something from them already has it. That's just the way the birds work. Yeah, my income's actually doing amazing now. Might be the free specialists. And science has started to spike again too. Hopefully it sticks around unlike that one turn. That was an annoying one. Oh, I'm right next to Prime Timber here. That's great. Okay, you can head back to the capital and sit there. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Whereas the Roman Empire was more secular, the thing is there weren't very many theocracies before the Middle Ages. Because the concept of divine right that monarchies often went with, well, it varied, I guess. But divine right is one of the most important glues when it came to society from that time. Because, you know, dictatorships and all that. Absolute power is easily justifiable if you said that, you know, the all-powerful deity in the sky said that I get to rule. It's part and parcel of the whole God King of Egypt thing. The pharaohs. You know also why the Japanese emperors are, legally speaking, and traditionally, the descendants of a, I believe, sun goddess? I think that's what she was the goddess of. And then there was that fun with idols that the Incan Empire had. You know all those Christian complaints about idolatry? It's really funny how the Incas had it. In that the idols were the actual, um, wait, oh. I mean, I would have gone to those gatherers anyway, but I need to... And Grove, but... Notice it's still better. Even with a plus 10 production, I still need to build the trading post because I forgot to do that, and that actually blocks off quite a few buildings. Important ones at that. That becomes easier to forget as time goes on. Because less and less buildings are requiring the trading post. But yeah, I mean, religion and the state are pretty strongly intertwined. And yes, you can build a society without religion. It's just a lot harder to build a more authoritarian one. Because I said so is not a good way to, is not good enough in many cases. For a lot of things that you build an authoritarian state to do. Whoops. Great. Thought you were a orc. But I keep digressing again and again on this topic with so many things. Yeah. I mean, I don't write a script for anything. I don't do that. That's not me. I don't even write down topics for this thing. I mean, of course the thing was that a board of attempted a video essay that I still haven't figured out because I gave up after drawing about 5 things, and I mean, you can see my drawing skills. I mean, I could just go ahead and bring it up and read it for one of these game sessions. Although these will also be real time because I'm not the kind of person to talk over a video. Uh, I'm not paying great attention to this, am I? Not one bit. Okay, that should be good enough. Unless... Oh wait, I already did all the production. Yeah, I'm not going to be seeing Gondor for a while. And yes, I do have 75% of the population of the world. Which, considering one person managed to conquer another civ, this is actually a bit surprising. Right, now you wait. Yes, rats reduce production. Usually not by much though, I think it's minus 1%. So you do need a lot of base production for it to become noticeable. Do we have the covered bridge already, or possibly? A mattress store. Uh, are we doing money laundering now? That's the word. Right. The reason why it took so long for me to make that joke was because I forgot the word. Anyway, I'm being awfully talkative now and my throat's starting to hurt. But after last time, I think it's probably better if I fill the silence somewhat. Okay, you actually spread your cultural order surprisingly quick. Okay, lynxes apparently aren't very aggressive, so... Otherwise I would not be able to walk a worker onto the tile. Jade requires quarry. Would have preferred a mine. Mines are better than quarries usually. But I'll do what I need to. Crap's good. Okay. Yes, the guild hall increases crime, but it is absolutely worth it. Unbelievably worth it. I will not take no for an answer on that. Although I will do the tree nursery first. But more trade means better science. Anyway. Yeah. Do the Middle Ages have a lot of bad things about them? Yes. But they also had a lot of good things about them. The guild system was actually a very nice precursor to the labor unions. Of course, some people don't like labor unions, and, well, actually, I don't understand. Unless, well, at least none of you are a normal person. I don't understand why you wouldn't like a labor union. Unless you flat out don't like interacting with other people, which I fully understand, actually. Coffee shop. Apprentice workshop. Carriage builder. Apprentice workshop. Tree nursery. Entire refinery kingdom shop. Port. There we go. But the guilds were a very interesting thing. They were also very, very self-organized to a degree that modern labor unions tend not to be. They were a lot more like the labor unions of 100 years ago, where there was no real union bureaucracy. A lot of it was self-organized, somewhat spontaneous, and very flexible. And also a very big reason why cities were very quick to feud with feudal lords, and also theocratic lords. Those institutions dominated cities for centuries. Centuries. And they were very much not rigid. Compared to how rigid feudal institutions were, they were like 2 steps removed from the caste system. 1 step removed would be slavery. Maybe. I don't know. I guess slavery would be a step sideways to the caste system. It's a different sort of oppression, but very similarly coded. Well, I guess I'll remove the city ruins. It's interesting having them because they sometimes give you good stuff. I do need to override it eventually with something else. But yes, with the arrival of the guild system, I could do so much more now. With production. I'm getting a lot more production from the guild buildings. And I can build the guild nationals. Agreed. Although nowadays I can't actually get by with reading because I need to read. Fundamentally, reading is the most valuable thing to me. That isn't, actually life vital. But yeah, the guild system is actually a very fascinating thing, and I say we should bring back something similar. Of course, with improvements. Absolutely. But it has something that we're honestly missing nowadays. I guess I couldn't drop that. Although I needed, well, it turns until I see him too, so. No stargazers, so I don't need that. Or the school of scribes. I need to pay attention to what requires what and what doesn't. Should also build some food. Slaughterhouse for sure. A lot of this minor stuff that takes less than a turn or less. When that's the case, go ahead and build it. There's no reason not to. At least not as much of a reason not to. Yeah, I'm good. Okay. Wait, no, bathing ritual. It's extremely cheap disease reduction. That number is severely underestimating the number of people. I mean, Middle Ages in 1140 BC is already weird. Although, I must admit it's a lot easier to optimize on a longer game. Because the speed that I'm used to playing at is 10 times faster. That means everything that takes 10 turns, like this engineering school, would be done in 3 turns. This farm, well, depending on the overflow, a single turn. These will all take a single turn. This forge will take probably 2. But that lowers the optimization. I can better optimize under certain circumstances. And it's noticeable. Although admittedly, it is fun to find a topic where there are so many ways for me to just offshoot that I'm suddenly talking about something completely different very quickly. And I still remember the main topic, but I don't remember how it got to that point. In fact, in a way, I find it hilarious. But it is enjoyable to jump around as quickly as my mind likes to do. Because it's very much something that my head does. Ooh, what's this? Oh yeah, this stuff, I know that. Oh hey, this is tangentially related. And this is tangentially related. I mean, I'm not surprised. The city has like 10 production. 19. So it's rather easy for hunting to cause overflow. Maybe if I ever remember to, I'll talk about civics next time. Yeah, that sounds like fun. Can I even place that down there? Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take my plus 25% strength. Go back to hunting. I need to improve it, probably. That's the only thing I can think of. And let's get you another one of those specialized buffs. Running out of things. Pick me up, oh. I remember checking every city to see if I can find something more useful, but same as before, nothing here. Dark frog. Yeah, something big. Probably the Okapi.
People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within.
Wait, that was a pigeon. Ugh. Great. The chimp attacked. How much production do I have? 122. How much does rats do? Okay, they're under pests. There we are. Minus 1%. Okay, so the 2 is probably a bit inaccurate. So it's basically similar to uh, trade route buffs. You're not going to get much production out of it. The biggest benefit to me, at least, is, well, for trade route yield anyway, or even trade route number. The biggest buff is the extra signs you obtain from having just more options. or specifically more commerce. Ah, good. I think that was the chimpanzee that was bothering me. Yep, looks like it. Maybe I should end this on something thesis-like. Sure. History is in a lot of ways a story. In more ways than you might think. One of the biggest is that you get out of history what you put into it. What I mean by this is that what you learn from it is dependent on what you're looking for and how you interpret what you find. If you specifically tease out, various scientific advancements and whatnot, you'll notice that things sometimes oscillate. Sometimes things improve faster, other times things improve slower, and on rare occasions, discoveries get lost and vanish before they're found again. But you slowly see the steady progress of people learning more and more about the world around them, getting a better understanding of how things are and why they are that way. If you look at military history, you're going to find a bunch of wars. So you're probably going to start thinking that, history is full of warfare fanatics. And yes, that's not completely incorrect. It was also filled with people that hated war. And a couple of people that, um, let's just say, built military investments in the thinking that, made inventions with the thought that, if I build a weapon so awful and destructive, then maybe we'll stop doing war. Because people will become scared of how powerful we've become. Side note, this never works. It never does. What you get is people that are eager to try out the new toys. Because there's always going to be people that don't really acknowledge the fact that other people have their own lives. Thank you very much. There's always going to be that. And the fact of the matter is, because of the way things work, they're usually the ones that end up in leadership positions. Especially when they're in some way hereditary. Or close enough to hereditary. If access to all the best schools have to be paid for, then the best educated people are naturally going to be the people that can afford it. Because of course, if you need money to be educated, why would you be surprised if all the most educated people happen to have loads and loads of money? Usually born into loads and loads of money, etc. Now back to the thesis. Just like with any story, you get out of history what you put into it. You'll find what you look for, probably. And depending on what you're looking for, well, it's probably going to conform to some of your ideals. It might be good, it might be bad, depending on what you look for. But one of the good things you can do is to at least try, please try, to find the positive aspects of our history. No one is perfect. None of us are. Neither is our history. But we can take the time to learn and understand what happened, why they happened, and perhaps how we can manage to do better than that. Or avoid doing worse, because that's also a thing that we should do. Great artist. Okay, I think I'll handle the great artist, figure out what to do with them. Oh, please don't tell me they're the last unit, because then I'll have to do another turn. And while I actually have no objections to doing another turn, I do need to stop eventually. Another city. Okay. You know what? I'll wait on that. Wait. Did I just see a horse trainer? Yes. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay. I could put the national epic here. That doesn't speed it up. Oh, that's because I just got a great person. So it went from like almost 500 turns to just 234. You know what? So I don't forget. Let's do the same old same. I think I'm gonna. I don't know where I'm going to send the unit though. Probably somewhere reasonable. Well, I'll try to send it somewhere reasonable. I'll have to figure out a good spot, but that's something for next time. Dink, 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 and there. Yeah, you'll probably find what you're looking for. You don't know that. This might shock you, but some of the people that watch Star Trek see the you know, see it as an amazing military show, showing the peak of what a soldier could be, of what an armed forces could be, and hate the very idea of egalitarianism and socialism. Kind of fitting that the music stopped here. Yeah. Regardless of what it is, death of the author always applies to any work of fiction. You can interpret whatever you want from a story. Sure, the story is built to accommodate more so certain interpretations than others. But with sufficient lack of media literacy or um, a sufficiently overpowering worldview, you can get anything out of a piece of art. And considering that history is, in a way, the biggest collaborative writing project of all of humanity, you can interpret just about anything out of it. And this whole, eye of the beholder thing counts doubly for anything that's large. I could pick out quotes out of, say, the Bible that say genocide is okay so long as God tells you to do it, or that slavery is fine, or even that slavery is bad. and that, you shouldn't kill people. Because, murder's wrong. As if that wasn't basic ethics 101. The same is true of history. So long as you pick out only certain things, you can read whatever you want out of it. That's just how it is. And just because people interpret it one way does not mean that it is a valid interpretation. And, well, it is a valid interpretation, but it's not necessarily the only way to read events. Like, even a relatively recent event, like, say, let's go topical. January 6, 2021? Yeah, 2021 in the USA. There are a lot of ways to interpret that event right now that exist. Some of which I think are complete and utter bollocks. Probably the epitome is the idea that that it was orchestrated by Antifa, which is mind-bogglingly incorrect. At least, that's how most of the evidence is, but there are still people that believe that it is that way. Partially because there are so many conspiracy theorists, but I am getting off track. Another one might be the Russian Revolution. There are so many ways to interpret that, because everyone had their own depiction of what happened, their own reasons for depicting it that way, some of which are more self-serving than others, etc., etc., etc. And you will find what you're looking for in history. I can guarantee that. Even something that most people will agree haven't happened, like aliens visiting. If you read between lines that don't exist hard enough, you'll find what you're looking for. Which is both uplifting and terrifying at the same time. That was not the direction I wanted to go with that. I wanted to move towards the more uplifting aspect, but then I went more negative. Either way, I'll see you again next time. Until then, bye.